new threat assessment is being used now to justify greater national security reforms, and of course with the landslide victory, it will certainly help Takaichi's approaches, and we've seen how also the measures and efforts to strengthen the Japanese defense and architecture, including the doubling of defense spending up to 2% of GDP by March, as well as expanding Japan's overall defense industrial base, and of course also in easing military export rules and mechanisms. All these are being seen as some structural reforms in terms of the security architecture of Japan, and of course also we have seen how this landslide support for Takaichi has helped these measures, including also the future debate on the revisiting of the constitutional barriers of Japan, especially with regards to the Article 9. But we have seen how now it is a strong message by Japan that is now moving away from this notion of strategic ambiguity to this pre-conflict deterrence, and we have seen also how by explicitly invoking China's measures as being seen as coercive in nature, Tokyo is reframing this whole threat environment from the basis of contingency management to this inevitable conflict deterrence, and we have seen how the decades and years and decades of conventional approaches to these failed approaches of the past, deterrence has collapsed, and now Japan is preparing to this whole escalation into kinetic risk and further gray zone competition, but also of course this looming bigger threats not only from Beijing but also from Pyongyang, and this is also in line with what Takaichi has stood for the past month, for the past couple of months now, and of course framing China as the ultimate threat, and this will ultimately also give added pressure on other regional powers, including South Korea, to also stand firmer on this line and to be in support of Japan, as well as strengthening also the Tokyo-Washington ties as a whole, especially with the great ties between Takaichi herself and with President Trump.
And Collins, despite this tougher tone, Takaichi says Japan will engage with China calmly and in its national interest. How do you think Beijing will see this, these new actions? Some experts are calling this the most significant transformation in Japanese defense strategy since the Second World War. How is Beijing going to be looking upon Tokyo at these developments?
Well, I think Beijing has been well aware of Takaichi's hawkish stance, and since for the past year now, since last year, and we have seen how Beijing is also anticipating this kind of movement and efforts to redouble Japan's readiness and to revamp in the overall defense and security architecture of Japan, which has been stagnant, which has been futile for decades now, and of course also Beijing is expecting Takaichi also to act in parallel with regards to maintaining the measures of trust between both powers, especially with regards to economic cooperation, and of course and Beijing is not expecting much in terms of the security domain, where Japan is expected to push firmer and harder on the stance with regards to protecting its own national interest and security, especially also with regards to Taiwan. And I don't see that to be the main factors that will translate into greater actions on the ground by Beijing, knowing that how Takaichi will respond. But of course, Beijing will continue to test the waters in the months to come in seeing how Japan and the US ties will translate into greater deterrent efforts being seen on East China Sea or South China Sea, and also especially with regards to Taiwan. We've seen how for the past couple of months now the continuous activities on gray zone coercive measures in place, and but I don't see how Beijing will need to further provoke Takaichi in terms of how to see how Takaichi will respond to these measures. But all in all, China is expected to continue these measures to maintain the red lines being set, and of course also to use these economic measures and economic tools to soften the stance of Japan, and to strengthen also its alliance building mechanisms in areas that will be of great importance, especially in Southeast Asia. And Japan is expected to execute similar measures. But all in all, I foresee that Japan will continue to maintain its own hardline stance, and I don't see any reason for Takaichi to jettison this new bold movement from now, Thomas.
Yes, Collins, Chong, Yu Keat, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here on NewsX World. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. We turn over now to Europe's east, where Ukraine is set to expand its defence exports this year, with reports estimating that sales could reach several $billions. Ukraine has approved the majority of 40 defence export applications, allowing for the export of components, spare parts and services, but not ready-to-use weapons, which will remain prioritised for Ukraine's own military needs. However, the government is considering an export tax on defence products, which could generate much-needed revenue for its underfunded military. This move comes amid growing interest from foreign nations, including 3 Middle Eastern countries and at least one Asian nation eager to purchase Ukraine's cutting-edge defence technologies. Furthermore, Ukraine is focusing on joint ventures and co-production arrangements to strengthen partnerships with its allies, regardless of the intermediate revenue. Meanwhile, the country continues to balance its wartime priorities with economic opportunities in the global defence market. Joining us to discuss this is Dr. Gilbert Doctorow, a Russian affairs expert, joining us live from Brussels. Thank you very much for joining us. Ukraine here expanding its defence exports while it's still at war. Is this a sign of industrial strength or financial necessity?
It's a combination of both. I think the audience must be aware that Ukraine is not a third world country in the pejorative sense. Ukraine was highly advanced in military production when it was within the USSR. And the capabilities that it accumulated then as a major supplier, even from the 1990s on, a major supplier of specific types of equipment, whether they were vessels, naval vessels, or parts for aircraft, that tradition has not been lost. It is also population that is considerable, even at reduced levels in the course of the war. So its capabilities are there, and that must be appreciated. That it would sell or try to sell some of its ongoing production of components for weapon systems is logical. However, let's be open with the fact that the vast majority of military materiel that is being used by the Ukrainian army on the battlefield is being supplied from the West. It is not domestically manufactured. So the volumes and the variety of equipment needed to maintain the war is beyond the capabilities of Ukraine, although it is itself a significant supplier of its needs for drones. That is a type of production which can easily be done in well-hidden underground or cellars, and is outside the capability of the Russians to destroy it all. So that the drone warfare is probably largely coming from Ukraine's own capabilities.
And do you think possibly after the war, of course, Ukraine could become a major European defence manufacturer post-war with Russia, given its current capabilities?
The capabilities are there, but the money isn't there. You need a lot of working capital to finance military industry in the present circumstances. A country like Germany has it. Other major European countries have a hard time accumulating the cash necessary for rearmament, and Ukraine certainly is at the end of the train in that regard. So it would be up to Western investors to specifically raise the military output of Ukraine for their own purposes, and they may do that, although the preference will surely be everywhere in Europe, at least, to manufacture military hardware themselves in country for the sake of raising employment and the growth of GDP.
Okay, do stay with us once again, Dr. Doctorow, as we turn on to our next story. A related development coming up next. The European Commission's 20th sanctions package includes a proposal to intercept tankers transporting Russian oil. The plan seeks legal grounds to stop, inspect and potentially seize vessels carrying Russian oil on the high seas, with negotiations underway to gain support from countries that register these tankers. According to reports, this initiative has raised concerns among several EU nations who are suspecting it could lead to military confrontations at sea. Russia has made it clear that it will not recognise the legality of such actions, adding to growing tensions surrounding the enforcement of these sanctions. Dr. Doctorow joins us once again. What more can you tell us about the jurisdiction here and the development here that many Russian oil shipments move via this so-called shadow fleet?
Well, the European Commission may hire a group of lawyers who will tell them what they want to hear. But in normal parlance, what they're proposing to do is called piracy. And piracy is the antechamber of all-out war. The Russians have made it plain that they will not allow this to happen. And this shows once again the utter irresponsibility of von der Leyen's commission. Both she and her chief diplomat, Kallas, are recommending to the EU actions that can only lead to a direct war with Russia. These people do not deserve to stay in power if Europe does not want to be destroyed.
Do stay with us once again, Gilbert, as we turn over to our next story once again. Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has apologized for his brief declaration of martial law in December of 2024, a day after a Seoul court sentenced him to life in prison for masterminding an insurrection. In a statement, Yoon expressed regret over the frustration caused by his actions, but defended the sincerity behind them. He claimed the court's decision was politically motivated and vowed to continue fighting against what he described as political retaliation. Yoon's martial law decree lasted just 6 hours before being overturned by Parliament, but it sparked widespread protests and led to a dramatic fall from power. He now faces life imprisonment after being convicted of subverting the constitutional order. We stay in the region next. Singapore's Maritime and Port Authority has said that an Indonesian crew member has died after a fire broke out on a cruise ship en route to Singapore. The MPA has added that based on the investigations, the fire broke out at the lounge area on Deck 9 of the World Legacy cruise ship, and the blaze was extinguished by Singapore Civil Defence Force. MPA has stated that all 271 passengers, including 139 Singaporeans, were safely evacuated and 4 of them were taken to hospital for further medical treatment. The MPA has also said that the incident occurred around 1:30 a.m. IST aboard the Liberia registered vessel, and the fire was put under control by the crew shortly. Now let's turn to North America, where a shooting at a playground in San Francisco del Rincon, Guanajuato, has left 2 dead and 8 injured. The shooting occurred in the evening of the 17th of February when gunmen opened fire on a park filled with children. A 36-year-old man was killed on the spot and a 24-year-old died later at the hospital. Witnesses described scenes of panic as mothers screamed and children fled in terror. Local residents expressed concerns over gang violence in the area, with gang members often seen gathering the neighborhood. Authorities are investigating the attack, which is linked to rising gang violence in the region. Indonesia has secured a trade deal with the United States that will reduce tariffs on Indonesian goods from 32% to 19%. Signed by Indonesia's senior economic minister, Erlangga Hartarto, and US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, the agreement exempts key exports like palm oil, coffee, cocoa, rubber and spices from tariffs. The deal also aims to boost US investments in Indonesia's critical minerals sector, with both countries agreeing to address non-tariff barriers and improve access to US markets for Indonesian products. Additionally, Indonesia will align with US standards on vehicles, medical devices and emissions. While stated as a win-win, the deal comes after a challenging start to 2026 for Indonesia, with market transparency concerns and recent credit rating downgrades. Furthermore, Indonesia has agreed to cooperate with the US on mineral production quotas, especially for key resources like nickel and cobalt, to reduce China's dominance in the global supply chain. The deal is set to take effect in 90 days, offering a promising future for both nations' economic growth. Let's listen in to some statements.
Dan ini salah satu daripada perjanjian yang membentuk Council of Trade and Investment, sehingga ini menjadi forum ekonomi kedua negara. Dan ini hasil daripada Agreement of Reciprocal Trade, sehingga seluruh persoalan investasi dan persoalan perdagangan antara Indonesia dan Amerika nanti akan dibahas dulu di dalam Council of Trade.
We turn once again to North America. Jeffrey Epstein's estate has reportedly reached a $35 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit that was filed against two of his advisors. The lawsuit accused Darren Indyke, Epstein's former personal lawyer, and Richard Kahn, his former accountant, of enabling his sex trafficking activities. If approved by a judge, this agreement will close a chapter in the legal battles surrounding Epstein's estate, which had already set up a restitution fund paying out $121 million to victims. The estate also previously settled an additional $49 million in payouts. Despite the settlement, neither Darren Indyke nor Richard Kahn admitted to any wrongdoing, with their lawyer stating that they were prepared to fight the claims, but they still opted to settle so as to avoid prolonged litigation. The settlement will provide victims of Epstein who haven't already received compensation with a confidential avenue for financial relief. US President Donald Trump has said that he has met Vas Narasimhan, the chief executive officer of Swiss drug maker Novartis, at the White House. Trump added that Narasimhan told him during the meeting that his company was building 11 US plants as a result of the president's tariff policies. Novartis spokesperson said that Novartis appreciates the opportunity to update the US government on its progress, including recent groundbreaking developments for manufacturing and research facilities in North Carolina and California, and plans to expand its radioligand therapy manufacturing network with a new site in Florida. Let's take a listen in to what Trump had to say.
So just yesterday, I was visited by the CEO of the drug company Novartis, and his name is Vaz, first name, great guy. And he came into the White House to see our great chief of staff, who happens to be with us. Where's Susie? Susie's with us someplace. She is great. First female chief of staff and the best chief of staff. And she wanted to bring him in. It's a big, very big company, all based outside of this country. And she wanted to bring him in, so I said, come on. So I said, hello, how are you doing? How's it going? Sir, I'm building 11 plants in the United States. I said, that's a lot. How many do you have? None. But we're moving almost all our business into the United States. And I said, why are you doing that? Tariffs. Tariffs! Can you believe it? He said, tariffs. And I got to be before a court.
Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Welcome to Nobel Laureates. I'm Kriti Mehta. This is the show where we sit down with the world's most brilliant minds, recipients of the highest honor in science, to explore the ideas and discoveries that have shaped our understanding of the universe. Today we are privileged to welcome one of the pioneers of modern materials science, Nobel laureate Dr. Dan Shechtman. Dr. Shechtman was awarded the 2011 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his discovery of quasi-crystals, revolutionizing our understanding of crystal structures. His work revealed that atoms can form mathematically ordered structures that do not repeat, challenging long-held beliefs and opening new frontiers in materials science. From breaking traditional notions of crystal order to shaping the future of materials research, Dr. Shechtman has spent a lifetime pushing the boundaries of chemistry and physics. Dr. Shechtman, welcome to NewsX World. It's an absolute honor to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Let's start the discussion then, Doctor. For the sake of our international audience, can you help them understand how you discovered quasi-crystals?
The discovery was made in 1982 while I was on sabbatical from my university in Israel, the Technion. I was on sabbatical at NBS, National Bureau of Standards, laboratories in Maryland, near Washington, D.C. And the research I was doing at the time was on aluminum manganese alloys, and I prepared a series of rapidly solidified aluminum manganese alloys from 1% to 35%, and studied them by electron microscopy, transmission electron microscopy, and studied the structure of the phases that were there. And then, when I studied the alloy of aluminum 25% manganese, I discovered a structure that did not exist, or at least we didn't know existed. And that structure was different than any other crystal structure, because all crystal structures that were studied until then were periodic. The atoms were arranged in a periodic fashion. And I discovered a crystal in which the atoms are arranged in a quasi-periodic fashion,
right,
which is totally different than the periodicity that we knew before. And this created a paradigm shift in crystallography.
All right. Doctor, what was the Eureka moment? Did you just know that you've literally redefined elemental chemistry, or did the extent of the discovery dawn upon you much later?
Well, when I made the discovery, let me explain how I did it.
Sure.
You know, in an electron microscope, you can see an image and you can do a diffraction pattern. And the symmetry of the diffraction pattern that is allowed in periodic crystals is only 2, 3, 4, and 6, no 5, and nothing beyond 6. And in my study, I discovered a diffraction pattern that had 5-fold rotational symmetry, which means that it cannot be periodic. And this is how quasi-periodicity was discovered by transmission electron microscopy.
Right, sir. There are many scientists who spend years with big discoveries, yet everything they rule out helps us own in on the truth. How do we celebrate their work?
You know about discoveries when scientists publish papers. And usually, if they don't find anything, they don't publish anything. But sometimes scientists discover something which was believed to be impossible or does not exist. And these are great discoveries that really promote our understanding of the nature of the world. So we do celebrate discoveries but we don't celebrate papers that were not published. We cannot do that.
All right, and there's always the long-standing debate of how one person makes a discovery, then some industrialist swoops in to get the rich of it. What do you make of all the modern technology billionaires?
Well, that's the way it is. Scientists are usually helping understand nature. Most of us are not business people. Although we have scientists which do business. I'm not a business person, and I did not enjoy any income from any company that was erected, was made by my discovery. But it is true, and it's okay with me. You know, I don't need to be a billionaire. I have enough to feed my family and enough to live good life, and that's okay. You know, billionaires are not necessarily bad people. They are well organized business people, and they provide jobs for many people, and they promote products that help us live better, healthier. So that's the way it is. We do science and they do business.
Yeah, that's very generous of you to have that take. Is artificial intelligence going to change the world, in your opinion?
Yes, it is going to change the world. It is already changing the world, and very fast. It can be an extremely helpful tool to mankind, to people who know how to use it, and already many millions of people are using the benefits of artificial intelligence. I think it's a wonderful development. I don't know that you can call it discovery. It's a development. It's a technology that was developed, and I look very positively at the possibilities that it will help us make progress.
Doctor, does it excite you or scare you? The possibility that AI comes with.
No, it excites me. Why should it scare me? You know, every innovation can be used for the well-being of people and can be used to destroy people. And I can name you many such discoveries. Dynamite, is dynamite good or bad? It's fantastic discovery, fantastic development. It can do great for mining. It can do also harm by explosives that kill people. So scientists do the discoveries. The way other people use it, it's theirs. So no, I think the discovery of or the development of artificial intelligence is wonderful.
All right, Doctor, which frontline fields of science do you feel have the post potential for exciting developments as of now?
I strongly believe in physiology, biology, medical studies. They make great progress almost daily for the benefit of mankind, and I believe that they will solve many diseases such as cancer and many other diseases. I believe that properly used, we can change bad genes in our body and cure people from genetic diseases. So I strongly believe that physiology, biology, and medicines are the most important sciences today.
What did you make of movies like Oppenheimer? Did you watch it?
Well, I saw the movie, of course, and I know the story. Here is one example. You can use atomic energy to produce electricity, and you can use atomic energy to destroy cities. Scientists like Oppenheimer do science. The way other people use it, we cannot control.
Doctor, can the mind be trained for the lifelong diligence of scientific research, or is it just an inherent trait?
Yeah. Oh, I strongly believe in education, in knowledge gained by teachers and in education. People around the world are born with more or less the same brain size and the same capabilities. Of course, some have better genes, but that doesn't make them geniuses. What does make them is education and knowledge, and this has to do with education. And this is why the educators, our teachers, are the most important people in the world, because they hold the future of their countries in their hand. The teachers in India hold the future of India in their hands. So I think that they are extremely important. I think that they should be paid well, more than what they're paid now. And only the good ones should teach. So teachers should be selected ahead of time, and this will carry India to great successes.
All right.
Select the teachers and give them good salaries so that you'll have good teachers.
Sure. My final question to you, Doctor. What is the daily life of a Nobel laureate like?
Just like yours. Shower, breakfast, work, raising children, raising grandchildren. You know, I am a family person. I am very proud of my family. I have 12 grandchildren, 4 children, and one wife. And she is a professor in the university. We cherish education in our families. All our children are highly educated with PhDs. And now we help educate our grandchildren, and they make great success. So my daily life has to do with elemental things, with a lot of reading, news, but also books, talking to people and giving lectures, because Nobel laureates are invited to give many lectures around the world, and I can say for myself, I'm very happy to do that. I've been to India several times. I met President Modi, and in fact, President Modi gave me a gold medal, huge gold medal. And I think India is doing a great job, and I wish the best for you and your people.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Shetman, for sharing your insights on our show, Nobel Laureates.
My pleasure.
For more stories, stay tuned to NewsX World.
Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing from topics from across the world. Today we turn our attention to an island state with a rather unique strategic significance, Mauritius. Situated at the heart of the Indian Ocean, Mauritius plays a key role in regional diplomacy, trade and security, from strategic partnerships with India to balancing relations with major powers and navigating the return of the Chagos Islands. Port Louis finds itself at the intersection of geopolitics and development. Joining me today is Mr. Minister Hambirajan Narsinghen, Junior Minister at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade of Mauritius. Thank you very much, Minister Narsinghen, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World.
Good afternoon. Ms. Prastiksha. It's a real pleasure for me to to speak and to give you some explanations to you and to our Indian brothers and sisters.
Thank you. Now, moving to our first question, Minister Narsingan. Mauritius may be a small island state, but it plays an active role in the diplomatic stage. So how would you describe Mauritius' foreign policy approach today, and what priorities are shaping its international engagements?
Yeah, I think you're right to mention that Mauritius is a small island state. This is very true, but at the same time, it is a dot in the Indian Ocean. But ever since its occupation by the Dutch, especially by the French, and subsequently by the British, you will see that Mauritius, as a small island, a small dot in the Indian Ocean, has always played a very, very important role because of its geographical position. Now, in spite of being a dot in the Indian Ocean, you will see that Mauritius is first and foremost an African state from a political and also for historical reasons. At the same time, it is situated in the Indian Ocean, a strategic location. It comprises 65% of people of Indian origin, but we've got the population hail also from Africa, from China, from France also, from different parts of the world. So Mauritius is a real melting pot, I would say. But in spite of the fact that it is small, but is also important, Mauritius is a big ocean state. It has extensive, vast areas of the ocean, and it is still underdeveloped, not fully developed. It has a lot of potential, which we have to unlock now. And you will see, you mentioned about our role in terms of diplomacy. Ever since independence, the father of the nation, Sir Sivasagar Ramgoolam, you will see, has been propounding a policy of neutrality. And our foreign policy, you will see, has been characterized by being a country which is non-aligned, very neutral, and we believe in a policy of non-interference. We are friends with everybody. We did not have enemies, and we don't want to have any enemies. And if you look at our national anthem, you will see that there is a very important part in that anthem, which says that in peace, justice, and liberty. So peace is a central point. Locally, there is peaceful coexistence among all the different groups, communities, and religions in Mauritius. But also, it is firmly anchored in Mauritius, but also at the level of the international scene, the father of the nation and the actual Prime Minister, Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam, both son and father, they have been advocating this very important policy. And different governments with different other prime ministers, you will see there has been a sort of consistency in terms of this sort of approach, in terms of this policy, which has paid its dividends. And whether the Western world, India, and other countries, even Russia and all countries, I think appreciate this stance of Mauritius at the international scene. So in spite of being small, we play a very strategic role in the Indian Ocean. We have the Indian Ocean Commission and the Indian Ocean Rim at the level of the Indian Ocean. But we also play a very important role in Africa through a number of African Union, first and foremost, but also through two important economic treaties, trade agreements. One is the SADC agreement, and the second one is COMESA, and one which is still at its budding stage, the AFCFTA. So Mauritius plays a very leading role, and we are a sort of coordinator for many of these African sort of frameworks, but also at the level of other countries like the ACP group. Mauritius has always been playing a very, very important role. At the international level, in all international organizations, we have just been elected as #1 country at the level of the Human Rights Council. So side by side with our economic development, we play a lot of emphasis on human rights also, and Mauritius has always been #1 or among the first in terms of economic development, ease of doing business, but without forgetting human rights.
Thank you very much, Minister Narsinyan, for sharing that insight. As you mentioned, there's a lot of vast potential that needs to be unlocked in Mauritius. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Prime Minister Ramgoolam have just reaffirmed the enhanced strategic partnership between India and Mauritius following their latest conversation that took place recently. So what distinguishes this partnership today, and how is it evolving beyond traditional cooperation into areas such as innovation and emerging technologies?
As you know, India has good relations, established relations with other African countries, but the relationship between India and Mauritius is very, very special for multiple reasons. You will see that that relationship is rooted in a sort of shared history. Besides the history, it has a lot of cultural affinity, and above all, it's a love between two people. That is the people of Mauritius and the people of India, whether you take North India or South India. And it is good to know that Sri Modi ji paid a special visit to Mauritius after the coming to power of this new government, spearheaded by Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam. And I think it is important to note that what Sri Modi ji mentioned, that it is not just a sort of relationship between two countries, it is a family. So Sri Modi ji and Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam both consider Mauritius, India, Mauritius, India as a family. And it is true because we have 65% of the population, they hail from India. But then, as I mentioned, we have people from Africa, we have origin from Africa and from China and from many different parts of the world, and we strongly believe in national unity. So this relationship over the years, as I mentioned before, the vision of Sir Sagar Ramgoolam, what a vision for Africa, what a vision for a special relationship with our traditional partners, the West, including France, the UK, and the United States, but trying to consolidate the relationship between Mauritius and India. And as you know, for example, Mahatma Gandhi, who paid a visit to Mauritius, helped a lot also Mauritius to its struggle for independence. And it was Mahatma Gandhi who sent a great man, Manilal Doctor, to Mauritius to help the emancipation of Mauritius. We are thankful to India for that. But over the years, as I mentioned, from that sort of emotional bond, we have been collaborating. There have been a number of agreements. And in 2021, there has been a sort of I would consider it to be a turning point, where we signed a very special agreement known as the SECPA. And it is important, as we proceed with this interview, to understand, we should not just mention. What is sad to note, I have to confess, that many people have been visiting Delhi, a number of other parts of India, Hyderabad, and Chennai, Coimbatore, and many other parts of India recently, since I've been acting as the Deputy Minister, Junior Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration and International Trade. When I talk to many Indian businessmen, they seem not to be fully aware. A few are quite aware, but many are not fully aware of the content of the SIGPA. I'll just give you a few examples, just to be concrete. Let us say you want to manufacture cars in Mauritius. So Mauritius can be a platform because Mauritius is a small market with approximately 1.3 million people. A small market, I agree. But then we have, with Africa, a potential market of 1.5 billion of people. So let us take the example of one businessman from India who wants to invest in Africa. He can come to Mauritius and structure his business. Now, besides the SIGPA, we have also a very, very preferential double taxation agreement with India. Many people are not aware. And in fact, at one time, still now, many NRIs from UK, from many parts, some African countries, and even from US, they come to structure their finance in Mauritius and then venture into Africa. So taking that concrete example of somebody who wants to manufacture cars or ships in Mauritius, they can, I give you another example. We got a free port.
Yes.
So they can come and manufacture in Mauritius and then export to Africa. And then when they're exporting to Africa, you will see it can go to the African market either duty-free or with low tariff.
Yes.
So this is a concrete example.
Thank you very much, Minister Narsingan, for sharing those examples with us as well. Now, you know, as you were saying, India and Mauritius share so much, including culture, also including the history, of course, being British colonization. So now that the UK has agreed to return the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, however, the future of the US-UK military base on Diego Garcia remains central to international security calculations, while US President Donald Trump has said a strong interest in maintaining American strategic control, saying the UK's plan is an act of stupidity in his words. So how does Mauritius plan to exercise its restored sovereignty, ensure justice for also displaced Chagosians, and at the same time manage pressure from major powers with security interests in the Indian Ocean?
So, as you know, we are in the process of finalizing that agreement with the United Kingdom. As I mentioned, Mauritius, we respect freedom of the press, we read the press, but at the same time, we have direct negotiation with the different protagonists. On one hand, with the United Kingdom, on the other hand, with United States. We have a profound respect, and this negotiation has been conducted in a very sort of masterful manner by our Prime Minister, Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam, along with his team, the Attorney General of Mauritius and other specialists in the field, along with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we are very, very optimistic that there would be a ratification. And I prefer to look at the official statement of the President of the United States, where he mentioned in the prevailing circumstances, this is the best deal that Prime Minister Starmer could have struck. And I think it's important to look at official statements. You see politicians at the level of the for domestic consumption, they make statements, but we are a peaceful nation. We believe in the rule of law at the domestic level, but also we believe at the rule of law at the international level. Security is important, and Mauritius has given all the undertakings, and the United States and the UK, they are fully aware that Mauritius has always been a country which will respect, which has always respected any agreement, and we are aware of the strategic role that UK and United States can play, because as you know, Indian Ocean is a strategic position. And you know that whoever controls the ocean will control, in a way, the trade. So the trade is important, and trade has to be conducted in a very peaceful manner. So we are not here. We want our sovereignty, but at the same time, we have agreements. We have agreement with the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has an agreement with US, and this all the guarantees have been given that this will not be disturbed at all. So we prefer to stay quiet. We are a small nation, peaceful nation. We just want to get back our sovereignty without disturbing anything.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And now, last but not least, Mauritius maintains strong relationships with both India and China, so the two major global powers with growing influence in the Indian Ocean. So how do you balance these partnerships while avoiding geopolitical rivalry playing out on Mauritian soil?
Well, as I mentioned, with our policy of non-alignment and neutrality, and also with our sort of historical ties with both countries. Obviously, we have more people coming from the Indian origin people, but this does not mean that if we like India, we have always been having a special relationship with India, that we cannot have a good relationship with other countries. So, and also I note at a very, very personal level, and that there has been a sort of, recently, good initiatives have been taken at the level of both India and China to have a good relationship. And we, as a nation loving peace, we are very happy that when countries, it is quite inevitable at times there are frictions, but we always have we should always, according to me, favor a sort of peaceful resolution of disputes and any friction. So it is good to note that recently there has been that sort of smoothing of the potential tension. And so we keep our special relationship with India, but also we have ties, emotional ties with China, and for us it's very natural to have this sort of relationship. But as I mentioned, we have a very, very strong relationship with other countries. I mentioned France, I mentioned the United Kingdom, United States. We have always been collaborating with all these countries. So for us, it's natural, it's instinctive to collaborate with all the countries to promote peace and collaboration. At the end of the day, what is important is whatever we do, it should trickle down to the poor people. It should trickle down to the downtrodden, to the lower middle class and the middle class. This is our policy. At least it is the main policy of our actual government and the dream of our actual Prime Minister, Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam.
Thank you very much, Minister Narsinghan, for sharing that deep insight and your views on focal length. Thank you very much. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of The Focal Length. For more international news and updates, stay tuned on NewsX World.
in the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of this hour. President Donald Trump warns Iran it has 10 to 15 days to strike a deal over its nuclear program or face really bad things as Tehran threatens to retaliate against US bases if attacked. Amid a major US build-up in the Middle East, Trump says talks are progressing but insists Iran must agree to a meaningful settlement. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is released from police custody after being arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over claims he sent confidential government documents to Jeffrey Epstein. Detectives from Thames Valley Police question him for hours as they investigate allegations. Hamas says any political path for Gaza must begin with a total halt to Israeli aggression and the lifting of the blockade following the first meeting of President Trump's Board of Peace. The group adds that any future arrangement must agree Palestinians' rights, including freedom and self-determination. South Korea's former president Yoon Suk Yeol apologizes for the hardship caused by his 2024 martial law decree 1 day after being sentenced to life in prison. In a statement released through his lawyer, Yoon says he is deeply sorry for the frustration caused by his actions. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi says she wants to accelerate talks on amending the constitution and reforming imperial succession rules. Speaking in Parliament, she calls for cross-party cooperation to revise the imperial house law and advance national debate. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the country has moved beyond its worst difficulties as he opens a key party congress in Pyongyang. State media quotes him saying the nation now enters a stage of optimism and confidence after years of hardship. Venezuela's ruling party-led legislature approves a limited amnesty bill that rights groups say does not go far enough to free hundreds of political prisoners. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez releases some detainees while easing oil tensions with Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron clashes with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni after a far-right activist is beaten to death in Lyon. Meloni blames the left-wing extremists and calls it a wound for Europe, while Macron urges her to stay in her own lane. We continue our coverage of the ongoing AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. And we have some response from Washington. The White House technology advisor, Michael Krastios, has stated that the United States totally rejects global governance of artificial intelligence. Krastios, leading the US delegation at the AI Summit in New Delhi, has emphasized that AI adoption should not be hindered by bureaucracies or centralized control. This statement comes ahead of a leaders' summit where a shared stance on AI technology is expected. Moreover, the US Undersecretary for Economic Affairs, Jacob Hellberg, will reportedly travel to India to join the US delegation at the summit on February the 20th to the 21st. Experts say that the Undersecretary's visit aims to strengthen US-India economic ties and also promote the American AI Exports Program. Some breaking news there coming out of the AI Summit. Major General A.K. Siwach joins us now, a geostrategic expert joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us here on the broadcast. Of course, this development is significant, especially for New Delhi. A complete governance of artificial intelligence has been a central concern at this summit. We are witnessing a revolution when it comes to whether we like it or not, when it comes to artificial intelligence, and it is a long shadow casting over the summit, of course, the dangers and the concerns that many experts have when it comes to this new technology. The White House is rejecting those claims that it seeks to govern artificial intelligence, even due to the fact that Washington and China both control 70% of the technology's industries. How have you made how Washington has navigated this and its rhetoric that it is pushing at the summit in terms of the agreements that it has made with New Delhi and its interactions with the rest of the world on this issue?
Yeah, Thomas, 3-4 points. One, no doubt about is the technical advisor of US, the way he has said, Michael. As far as artificial intelligence is concerned, there are certain plus points, there are certain negative. The plus points are very obvious that in future you will find it efficiency, effectiveness, transparency will increase and your governance will become far easier. But at the same time, there are certain negatives that it may take the jobs which are now done by humans. And the second point is that the AI should not become so powerful that it start dictating terms with the humans. That's the biggest challenge which is going to be faced by the humanity in time to come. But all said and done, the AI is there to stay, and AI will play a major role in governance, provided we handle the AI in a proper manner. The point which is coming is, it should not be centralized and it should not be under the bureaucracy control. Then you will find it, you will not able to get maximum output. Remember, as far as US is concerned, the 40% of the AI of the world is being used in US itself. So US has got a lot of experience on that. But all said and done, one thing is very clear. The AI will make your job much easier. You will be more efficient. Transparency will come. The jobs which are repetitive in nature, that AI will take on because it's done one after the other. They will be far, far stronger and efficient and effective than human beings. At the same time, the threat which people are feeling or the world is feeling that they will replace humans and the jobs will be lost may not be totally true, because there will be some more jobs created. What jobs will be taken is those which are repetitive, and you will find that once the efficiency will increase, it will then give you more productive output. So therefore it depends upon humans how we have to use AI to our advantage. We cannot allow AI to become all powerful that tomorrow it start dictating to the humans. That is the threat which is there. I suppose if we take a care of it, you will find it that AI will be here to stay, and AI will be beneficial, and it will be complementary to the human efforts, not contradicting to human, and not that they will be replacing human. This is the crunch point, Thomas.
Indeed. Do stay with us, Major General Sawatch, as we turn to our next story. We're still covering the AI summit coming out of New Delhi, where the United Nations chief, Antonio Guterres, has called for less hype, less fear over artificial intelligence. Guterres has said that a new expert panel aimed to make human control a technical reality. Guterres added that the United Nations General Assembly had confirmed 40 members for the group and called the Independent International Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence. Let's take a listen into what Guterres had to say.
We are barreling into the unknown. AI innovation is moving at the speed of light, outpacing our collective ability to fully understand it, let alone govern it. Science informs, but humans decide. Our goal is to make human control a technical reality, not a slogan. And that requires meaningful human oversight in every high-stakes decision in justice, healthcare, credit. Science-led governance is not a brake on progress. It is an accelerator for solutions, a way to make progress safer, fairer, and more widely shared. It helps us identify where AI can do the most good the fastest. The message is simple: less hype, less fear, more facts and evidence. Guided by science, we can transform AI from a source of uncertainty into a reliable engine for the Sustainable Development Goals. Let us build a future where policy is as smart as the technology it seeks to guide. Thank you.
Joining us once again is Major General A.K. Sawatch. The United Nations has come under much criticism of late over how it can control the likes of global conflicts, things that it was set up to do. Do you see the institution carrying weight when it comes to tackling this AI crisis, or the AI concerns, I should put it?
You know, Thomas, no doubt about it. See, AI has got a lot of plus points, and there are few apprehension and negative. It is, as a humans, how we utilize the AI, that's the very important point. The AI should be used as a tool. You should not become a slave to AI. That's a very important point. It should not become so powerful in time to come, it start dictating them to humans. And that will be a dangerous thing. What is AI can do is, that it can improve your productivity, your efficiency, your transparency, and it can take the repetitive job which are done by humans. But at the same time, it creates new job which can be done by the manpower. So therefore, the fear is ill-found that the AI will take the jobs from the humans and there will be unemployment. The same fear was also once upon a time pointed out when the computers were coming. So I suppose AI is there to stay. It will make our job much easier. It will make it more efficient, effective, and it is beneficial to human beings, provided we use it in a very controlled method, and we should not go all out and open all doors for AI in a manner that tomorrow they start dictating them to human. So that is the biggest challenge what must be taken care of it. Otherwise, AI have all the positive. You will find by 2050, the majority of the jobs which are there and which produce maximum result and effectiveness and global governance, you will find will be done by AI, and you will able to do certain things which you have never dreamt as on today, because AI will give you that capability to perform.
Major General A.K. Sawatch, thank you so much for taking the time in speaking to us here on NewsX World. Great pleasure to talk to you. We turn now to East Asia, and in a policy speech to Japan's parliament, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has outlined her administration's plans to break from long-standing fiscal austerity policies in a bid to revive Japan's economy. Takaichi has emphasized that her governments will focus on being increasingly long-term investments in sectors like artificial intelligence, semiconductor manufacturing and shipbuilding. This shift in fiscal policy, she said, is necessary to lift the country's economic prospects without further burdening the nation's debt. Moreover, Takaichi has also addressed growing global economic challenges, noting that nations are increasingly using economic coercion by controlling supply chains and strategic resources. As part of her plan, Takaichi has proposed utilizing reserve funds to rebuild supply chains that are independent of specific countries and enhancing ties with like-minded nations to reduce dependency. Let's take a listen in to her statement on the proposed fiscal policies.
マーケットからの信任を損なう野放図な財政政策を取るわけではありません。片山大臣のもとに租税特別措置、補助金見直し担当室を設置するなど、行財政改革を進めた上で戦略的な財政出動を行っています。成長率の範囲内に債務残高の伸び率を抑え、政府債務残高の対 GDP 比を安定的に引き下げていきます。
On the issue of wages, Takaichi has pledged that the government would not simply shift the burden of wage increases onto businesses. Let's listen in to her comments.
継続的に賃上げできる環境を整えてまいります。強い経済の実現により、賃上げの原資を生み出すとともに、ガソリン、軽油の暫定税率廃止による値下げなどの物価高対策を着実に実施していくことで、物価上昇を上回る継続的な賃上げを実現します。
Craig Peacock joins us now, a chief advisor at Kajaku Japan Advisory in Tokyo. He's joining us live there. Thank you very much, Craig, for joining us. Breaking from fiscal austerity, Japan's debt to GDP ratio remains above 250%, the highest among advanced economies. How likely do you see Japan breaking from this under Takaichi's secure new government?
Well, thank you, Thomas. Yes, I think it is very likely. If you look at the last 30 years, there's been such a stagnant economy in Japan that people are very disillusioned, and I think that's why they delivered her a supermajority in the election on February 8th. And so given that supermajority, she has a very good chance of being able to push these measures through Parliament and to stimulate the economy. Her measures, the things that she's proposed, like the temporary levy on the temporary moratorium on the consumption tax, food consumption tax, that's probably something which will stimulate the economy quite nicely. But it'll come down to whether she delivers or not. This kind of political rhetoric has been seen in Japan before, and it hasn't been delivered on. So that's what we'll have to watch out for.
And Craig, she has said that her focus sectors are not random. They'll include the likes of artificial intelligence, semiconductor manufacturing, and shipbuilding. I guess the core question is, can Japan spend more to grow without destabilizing its finances? How likely do you think that will be?
I think that'll be very likely. And yes, the answer to your question, Thomas, is yes. Very few people seem to note that Japan's debt is mostly domestically held. And so that gives them an advantage in being able to work that a little better.
Indeed. And using these economic coercion concerns, we're talking about rare earth, semiconductor supply, energy flows and shipping choke points. Given Japan's place on the map and its alliances, how do you view the Takaichi administration navigating this new resource-driven landscape where the likes of rare earths, artificial intelligence capabilities can be weaponized?
Yes, well, I think the key to that, of course, is moving away from China supply chains. And Japan does have secondary supply chains which they can level up into major supply chains. For example, rare earths from Australia. You will note that in the agreement between President Trump and Prime Minister Albanese a couple of months ago, rare earths were very high on the agenda to move away from the China supply chain, and Japan is one of the beneficiaries of that, and so we will see that. Japan also has a very strong semiconductor industry, and the previous dominance that China has displayed in that sector, there is room for Japan to move into there as well.
And finally, Craig, Japan faces a demographic decline, a key issue there, along with these stagnant wages that you've spoken about previously. Will strategic investment meaningfully improve household incomes, both short-term and long-term?
Well, again, that's something that we'll have to wait and see. I'm confident that it will. I'm confident that there will be greater foreign investment in Japan. There has been in the last few years. It's certainly grown. I think that growth will certainly continue. And despite all of the rhetoric that comes out of Japan on immigration and the policy towards having foreign workers, I still think that that will grow as well. So yes, I think it is possible.
Craig Peacock there joining us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much for taking the time in joining us here on NewsX World. Pleasure to have you. We turn over to West Asia now, and Hamas has called for a complete cessation of Israeli aggression as a precondition for any discussions on the future of Gaza. In a statement following the first meeting of US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace, Hamas emphasized that political talks must start with the lifting of the blockade and the recognition of Palestinians' right to freedom and self-determination. Israel currently controls over half of Gaza under a US-brokered ceasefire, but tensions remain high. Since the truce began, Hamas has been accused of violating it, with terror operatives killing 4 Israeli soldiers, leading to retaliatory airstrikes from Israel that have resulted in over 500 Palestinian deaths. Peter Baum joins us now. He is the editor of the Weekly Blitz. He joins us live from London. Peter, thank you very much for joining us here on the broadcast. We are now in a situation where there are no hostages held in Gaza, and that there is a plan that the Board of Peace has now met, with members still being added by the month, it seems. But of course, one core situation and an issue remains: the disarmament of Hamas. Of course, one can look at this and cite violations on both sides. But Peter, the first phase wasn't completed in a correct fashion. Hostilities weren't stopped. Humanitarian aid was not allowed to flow free into the enclave. But of course also Israeli soldiers were killed. There were violations on both sides. How likely is a Hamas disarmament diplomatically, voluntarily, given the state of the ceasefire right now?
Yeah, I don't think when the ceasefire first came into play, anyone thought for 1 minute that there were not going to be breakages in that ceasefire, and that's proven to be correct. Now, Hamas, as we know, are a proxy of Iran, and their fortunes, the fortunes of Hamas, are directly correlated to the fortunes of Iran. And it seems that both are going through a period of spiraling downward trajectory. However, Hamas, because of their military strength, because of the political support they've built up over the years, are still a major presence in Gaza, which is something that the Israelis did not want at the outset after October the 7th. They wanted to completely defeat Hamas, both militarily and politically. It seems that that is not going to happen, although Hamas are now in a much weaker position than they were. So the challenge now is for Trump's phase 1 and phase 2 to be successfully completed, is how much pressure can the Arab states, specifically Qatar and Turkey, and Egypt for that matter, pressure Hamas to dilute their military operations and just become a partner in a political environment. If that can be achieved, there is huge hope for the Palestinians, and that will be determined on how Iran fares in the next couple of months. If Iran has a regime change, then it seems to me that Hamas will not be able to be as controlling militarily, but it still may have a political presence.
Okay, Peter, do stay with us as now we move over to Latin America for our next story. Venezuela's National Assembly has unanimously approved a long-awaited amnesty law that could lead to the release of hundreds of political prisoners. The law, however, excludes those accused of promoting military action against the state, which could include opposition leaders like Marina Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner last year. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez signed the bill, stating one must know how to ask for forgiveness and receive it. Following the approval, opposition figure Juan Pablo Guanipa, who had been imprisoned for nearly 9 months, was released. The approval of the law comes amid ongoing calls for the release of other political prisoners and growing pressure for the government to show genuine commitment to democratic reforms. Let's take a listen in to the statements.
Hay que saber pedir perdón y hay que también saber recibir perdón. Y ese es el proceso que se abre con esta ley de amnistía. Pero la ley de amnistía también va más allá. Pedirle al Parlamento venezolano y pedir al programa de convivencia democrática y paz que se activen a la revisión de casos no contemplados en la ley de amnistía y den las recomendaciones pertinentes para curar heridas, para reencauzar la convivencia democrática y para reencauzar la justicia.
Ha ocurrido un hecho histórico, un hecho que inició cuando usted tomó la iniciativa de la conformación de un programa de convivencia y paz que ha recorrido todo el territorio nacional en un proceso amplio de consultas y que también planteó la necesidad de la aprobación de una ley de amnistía.
Peter Baum joins us once again. What are your thoughts on this development, given that Delcy Rodriguez is, of course, still in charge of Venezuela, seemingly keeping Washington at bay from enhancing any further hawkish movements inside the country? The release of these political prisoners, how significant is it? Is it going far enough or not?
Well, it's a major step, Thomas. And what is incredible about this Venezuela story, when you think what the Trump administration have achieved, it would have seemed at the outset that the opposition in waiting would by now have become more dominant in the ruling of the country. But as you quite rightly say, Maduro's protege is definitely keeping Trump online, and she has retained power and is making all the right moves diplomatically, politically, to try and retain that the left remain in power. Now, I think the release of the political prisoners is a major step. Does it go far enough? probably not for the Trump administration, and I think we will see some further movement in the weeks ahead. What the opposition will be calling for, though, when they feel it's right, and I'm suggesting that's going to be by the autumn of this year, are new elections in Venezuela, and then we will see where the country wants to go. But I think from the American administration's point of view, they are quite happy to allow Rodriguez to carry on with her diplomacy, carrying on doing the right thing that Trump wants to do. No one wants to see further violence or bloodshed in Venezuela. And I think, frankly, Thomas, when one thinks that what Trump did with Maduro, this is rather a political win for the right wing of American politics.
Peter Baum, thank you as always. Great pleasure discussing these things with you here on the broadcast. We now turn over to West Asia once again, and Turkish authorities have detained Alican Uludag, a veteran correspondent for Deutsche Welle, accusing him of disseminating misleading information and insulting the president. The Istanbul Chief Public Prosecutor's Office confirmed the detention and said the arrest was based on his social media posts. Uludag, who has worked for the media outlet for several years, was arrested in Ankara and was transferred to Istanbul police. Deutsche Welle condemned the arrest, calling it a deliberate act of intimidation aimed at suppressing press freedom. The charges stem from Uludag's criticism of government actions regarding the release of suspected ISIS groups. ProSafe has appointed Halvadan Kiland as its permanent chief financial officer. Kaliland joined ProSafe from the investment banking sector, where he specialized in energy services and offshore. CEO Rhys McNeil highlighted Kaland's important role in the company's refinancing efforts last year and his contribution to the company's strategic repositioning for future growth. McNeil expressed confidence in Keeland's ability to drive value creation and looks forward to continue their collaboration. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump warns Iran it has 10 to 15 days to strike a deal over its nuclear program or face really bad things. Amid a major US military buildup in the Middle East, Trump says talks are progressing but insists Iran must agree to a meaningful settlement. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is released from police custody after being arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over claims linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Detectives from Thames Valley Police question him for hours as they investigate the allegations. President Donald Trump tells the first meeting of his Board of Peace that nations have pledged $7 billion for Gaza's reconstruction, conditional on Hamas disarming. Major questions remain over disarmament, Israeli troop withdrawal, humanitarian aid, and whether the board can deliver results. South Korea's former president Yoon Suk Yeol apologizes for the hardship caused by his 2024 martial law decree 1 day after being sentenced to life in prison. In a statement released through his lawyer, Yoon says he's deeply sorry for the frustration caused by his actions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the country has moved beyond its worst difficulties as he opens a key party congress in Pyongyang. State media quotes him saying the nation now enters a stage of optimism and confidence after years of hardship. Venezuela's ruling party-led legislature approves a limited amnesty bill that rights groups say does not go far enough to free hundreds of political prisoners. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez releases some detainees while easing oil tensions with Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron clashes with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni after a far-right activist is beaten to death in Lyon. Meloni blames left-wing extremists and calls it a wound for Europe, while Macron urges her to stay in her own lane. The United States and Indonesia finalize a trade deal, cutting US tariffs on Indonesian goods from 19% to 32%, while Jakarta removes barriers on more than 99% of American imports. Washington also grants select exemptions on Indonesian textiles, saying the agreement breaks down trade barriers and advances US interests. We start this hour in the Indian capital of New Delhi, where the 5th day of the AI Impact India Summit is well and truly underway, and we are covering the developments going on there. This hour, the US Undersecretary for Economic Affairs will travel to India on February the 21st to join the US delegation at the India AI Impact Summit. The delegation is led by Michael Krastios, the director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. During his visit, the Undersecretary will hold bilateral meetings and speak at the summit, aiming to strengthen US-India economic ties and promote the American AI Exports Program. Joining us in this discussion to cover the ongoing AI Summit in New Delhi and this development in particular is Gautam Mukherjee, a senior journalist. He joins us live from New Delhi. Gautam, thank you very much. As always, it's a great pleasure to speak to you here on the program. The US-India partnership has well and truly been solidified today, especially, of course, in the tech and AI field, with India joining that Pax Silica agreement. Now we have the announcement that the US Undersecretary for Economic Affairs will travel to India from today and tomorrow. What is your thoughts about the agreements that have been signed today and what that means for the ongoing AI landscape, the ongoing relationship, strategic relationship between Washington and New Delhi, and of course India joining that group of nations, including Israel, the United Kingdom, Japan, Australia, and of course the US, moving forward in the AI world and the semiconductor one too?
Well, AI and semiconductors have been around for a while, but AI is the shape of the present and future. India has put up a huge conference here in Delhi precisely because it is eager to get on board. America is the leader in AI, with China as also coming up with a process which is half as expensive. But in the main, it is America. And so when the American delegation gets here for this conference, it is of immense interest to India. There are many American CEOs who have come here already and have spoken at the conference, expressing great optimism in the progress of AI in India, the collaborations that are going to happen, several investments, and several data processing centers. We will need a lot more. And AI has an interesting aspect. AI develops AI. So it isn't just applying it to applications, of which we have many in India, many requirements. It is also extremely fast advancing because AI can be put to work to develop further AI products. So in all of this, we need immense investment, and we need massive collaboration with a number of partner countries, of which America has a leading position.
Do stay with us, Gautam, as we cover further updates. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with hereditary Prince Alois of Liechtenstein today in Delhi for a bilateral discussion. The talks aimed at strengthening ties between India and Liechtenstein, particularly in trade, investment and technology. Both leaders expressed a shared interest in expanding cooperation with a special focus on AI and other emerging technologies. This meeting comes as India continues to enhance its role in the global tech landscape, promoting innovation and collaboration with key global partners. Gautam, this hasn't just been a tech summit. This has been a global focal point with attracting world leaders from across the spectrum. We've seen the likes of French President Emmanuel Macron in attendance, Brazil's President Lula da Silva, along with the UN Secretary General also in attendance. We saw him attending and speaking to the summit today. In terms of strategic positioning for India, how has this summit improved bilateral relations and multilateral relations, really, over the past week?
Well, in the wake of all the FTAs that have been signed and more that are in the offing with Chile and Canada, and emergent business proposals based on the G20, G21, BRICS, India is the flavor of the world because it is well on its way to becoming the third largest economy in the world. We have probably the largest single market for goods and services as well as AI in the world, and a massive demand that is evident in variety of areas and will be ongoing for the next 30 years. There are 1.4 billion people here generating this demand, and it is something that nobody wants to miss out on. We are neutral in most of the world's conflicts. We get on with everybody, and as a consequence, everybody gets on with us, and that is why a lot of countries have decided to come here using this
conference, this tech conference, and building it up almost into a summit of the free states of the world interacting with India.
Gautam, do stay with us. We have further updates. Brazil's ambassador to India, Kenneth Felix Hanzinski de Nobregueira, highlighted the historic nature of President Lula's visit to India, accompanied by the largest ever Brazilian delegation. The group includes over 11 cabinet ministers and 300 businessmen, including 50 CEOs. This visit, he said, takes bilateral relations between India and Brazil to a new level. Ambassador Nobregueira also noted the strong chemistry between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Lula Inácio da Silva, emphasizing their friendship beyond professional ties. He described the summit as significant for the Global South, with India emerging as a new hub for AI technology thanks to PM Modi's efforts to involve the Global South in the AI revolution. Gautam, what more can you tell us about what this summit has done for the Global South? Of course, India and Brazil, two key figures of that.
Well, I think there's going to be quite a few collaborations with Brazil. It is both a developed country and a member of the Global South. India is well on its way to becoming a developed country. It is determined to be there by 2047. As far as the bulk of the countries in the Global South goes, their relationship with India since the G20-21 has improved dramatically. The countries of Africa, the countries of the Middle East, the countries of North Africa, all of this is now seeking Indian collaboration in a variety of ways, because it really doesn't cut across any
Yes. Do stay with us, Gautam, once again as we turn to one final update coming out of the conference. And Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw hailed the Pax Silica alliance as crucial for India's emerging technology ecosystem. As India officially joins the US-led initiative, Vaishnaw emphasized its role in strengthening global supply chains for critical minerals and artificial intelligence. He highlighted that the partnership will bolster India's position in the global AI tech landscape, fostering innovation and economic growth. The initiative aims to build resilient, secure supply chains for AI and critical minerals, driving prosperity for all involved nations. We turn from South Asia and over to the United States. Jeffrey Epstein's estate has reportedly reached a $35 million settlement to resolve a class action lawsuit that was filed against two of his advisors. The lawsuit accused Darren Indyke, Epstein's former personal lawyer, and Richard Kahn, his former accountant, of enabling his sex trafficking activities. If approved by a judge, this agreement will close a chapter in the legal battles surrounding Epstein's estate, which had already set up a restitution fund paying out $121 million to victims. His estate also previously settled an additional $49 million in payouts. Despite the settlement, neither Darren Indyke nor Richard Kahn admitted to any wrongdoing, with their lawyer stating that they were prepared to fight the claims, but they still opted to settle so as to avoid prolonged litigation. The settlement will provide victims of Epstein who haven't already received compensation with a confidential avenue for financial relief. Gautam Mukherjee joins us once again. Of course, this follows one of the many legal sagas surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and his estate. We saw a similar settlement against Prince. With Prince Andrew settling with Virginia Giuffre, one of his main accusers. What do these settlements say? Of course, they're not an indication of guilt, but surely just the vast wealth and the intricacies of how complicated this case is legally, even after the death of the late paedophile, continues to go on. What more can you say about this case?
Well, it represents a massive ring of influence peddling and underage sex, all kinds of perversions, possible, alleged. And I think that the countries involved, the people involved, and the victims involved all are very keen on restitution, have suffered in this ring of people who are, very, very predatory from all accounts. And it is very appropriate. People who say, okay, we're not guilty, but we'll pay anyway, is indicative of what is yet to happen. I think a lot of people who have benefited from Epstein's rings and his cynical exploitation of people, and in a way, kind of a blackmail ring as well, will have to be compensated before this thing is brought to a close.
Indeed. Gautam, do stay with us one final time as we turn on to our next story. And the Taliban has introduced a controversial new penal code that effectively legalizes domestic violence against women, allowing husbands to physically punish their wives and children as long as there are no broken bones or open wounds. Signed by Taliban leader Hibatullah Akhundzada, the code sets different punishments based on the offender's social status. Husbands who cause visible injuries like fractures could face just 15 days in prison, but only if the woman can prove the abuse in court. This too could be a daunting process, as the new code requires the woman to present her wounds while fully covered and being accompanied by her husband or a male chaperone. The new code also harshly punishes women, with those visiting relatives without their husband's consent facing up to 3 months in jail. In addition, the code reportedly creates a caste-like system where punishments vary depending on whether the offender is a religious scholar, elite or middle class, or from the lower class. More severe punishments, including corporal punishment, are reserved for lower class individuals. Additionally, corporal punishment for serious offences will now be carried out by Islamic clerics rather than correctional services. The new penal code has replaced the previous 2009 law that aimed to eliminate violence against women, and rights groups are speaking out against it. Joining us once again is Gautam Mukherjee. It's now been around 5 years since the renewed takeover by the Taliban of 2021. There were hopes for a revisionist Taliban government when they first came to power. However, these reports very much coming out that women's rights are being infringed on once again in some of the most brutal ways possible. Gautam, what more can you tell us about this and how and if regional actors might respond to it in terms of diplomatic negotiations and ties with the Taliban government, as we're seeing some countries warm towards them slightly? Russia, for example, has already recognized the Taliban government as Afghanistan's official heads of state.
Well, India gets on very well with the Taliban now. Even though it falls short of formal recognition as Russia has granted. we skirt around all this savagery because to our minds, to the Indian way of doing things, this is absurd. It's extremely brutal. But if you want to deal with the Taliban at all, and we do so for both geostrategic reasons and because of our approach to foreign policy in the immediate region, where we try to steer clear of military cooperation, but at the same time, we've always cooperated with different Afghanistan regimes with aid and engineering help and roads and dams and even by building the Afghanistan, the parliament. Perhaps some of our ways will rub off on the Taliban as the time goes on. Where the wellspring is for such savagery is hard for the world to understand, the liberal world to understand, of which India is very much a part. It stems from a kind of fundamentalism that we can barely understand. But wherever possible, we are cooperating with them. And in turn, the Afghans are very warm towards India. They want us to use the Bagram base if we want. They want us to start industries and get into the mining of enormous resources that they have if we so want. So we get on with them, but we skirt around these kind of issues because we don't know what to say about it. It's deeply embedded in their way of doing things, their clerics, their approach to women, which, let us remember, was not always the case. Afghan women were very free in the 70s, as they were in Iran. This is a wave of fundamentalism that has come about in this part of the world and created some bizarre consequences.
Gautam Mukherjee, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. We now move over to some developments from the Indo-Pacific, where Indonesia has secured a trade deal with the United States that will reduce tariffs on Indonesian goods from 32% to 19%. Signed by Indonesia's senior economic minister, Airlangga Hartarto, and US Trade Representative Jameson Greer, the agreement exempts key exports like palm oil, coffee, cocoa, rubber, and spices from tariffs. The deal also aims to boost US investments in Indonesia's critical minerals sector, with both countries agreeing to address non-tariff barriers and improve access to US markets for Indonesian products. Additionally, Indonesia will align with US standards on vehicles, medical devices, and emissions. While stated as a win-win, the deal comes after a challenging start to 2026 for Indonesia, with market transparency concerns and recent credit rating downgrades. Furthermore, Indonesia has agreed to cooperate with the US on mineral production quotas, especially for key resources like nickel and cobalt, to reduce China's dominance in the global supply chain. The deal is set to take effect in 90 days, offering a promising future for both nations' economic growth. Joining us now is Mitali Nikore, an economist joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. 32% from 19%, and also this alignment now, which Indonesia has to adhere to with the US standards on vehicles, medical devices, and emissions. First of all, how much of a difference will that cut of around 15% due to the Indonesian exports? And also, what does it mean for the economy now that Jakarta has to align with these standards on vehicles and emissions and medical devices?
So thanks a lot for having me on the show. I think, what is very clear when I recently visited Indonesia and, doing a few projects there, what I've understood about the Indonesian economy is that there is now a huge tilt and a huge amount of investment that the Indonesian economy is attracting from a number of Chinese investors.
Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of this hour. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi says she wants to accelerate talks on amending the constitution and reforming imperial succession rules. Speaking in Parliament, she calls for cross-party cooperation to revise the imperial house law and advance national debate. President Donald Trump warns Iran it has 10 to 15 days to strike a deal over its nuclear program or face really bad things, as Tehran threatens to retaliate against the United States if attacked. Amid a major US military buildup in the Middle East, Trump says talks are progressing but insists Iran must agree to a meaningful settlement. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is released from police custody after being arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over claims he sent confidential government documents to Jeffrey Epstein. Detectives from Thames Valley Police question him for hours as they investigate the allegations. Hamas says any political path for Gaza must begin with a total halt to Israeli aggression and the lifting of the blockade following the first meeting of President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. The group adds that any future arrangement must guarantee Palestinians' rights, including freedom and self-determination. South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol apologizes for the hardship caused by his 2024 martial law decree, one day after being sentenced to life in prison. In a statement released through his lawyer, Yoon says he is deeply sorry for the frustration caused by his actions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the country has moved beyond its worst difficulties as he opens a key party congress in Pyongyang. State media quotes him saying the nation now enters a stage of optimism and confidence after years of hardship. Venezuela's ruling party-led legislature approves a limited amnesty bill that rights groups say does not go far enough to free hundreds of political prisoners. Interim President Rodriguez releases some detainees while easing oil tensions with Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron clashes with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni after a far-right activist is beaten to death in Lyon. Meloni blames left-wing extremists and calls it a wound for Europe, while Macron urges her to, quote, stay in her lane. We start this hour in East Asia, and in her first speech to Japanese Parliament following her election victory, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has pointed out to Japan's growing concerns over China's increasing military activity and its unilateral efforts to alter the status quo in the South and East China Seas. Despite the ongoing tensions, Takaichi has reiterated that her cabinet remains focused on fostering a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship with China while ensuring Japan's security and interests are safeguarded. Let's listen in to her statements on the issue.
私たちが慣れ親しんだ自由で開かれた安定的な国際秩序は今大きく揺らいでいます。そうした中、我が国は戦後最も厳しく複雑な安全保障環境に直面しています。 中国は東シナ海、南シナ海での力、または威圧による一方的な現状変更の試みを強化するとともに、我が国周辺での軍事活動を拡大、活発化させている。中国とは戦略的互恵関係を包括的に推進し、建設的かつ安定的な関係を構築していくことが高市内閣の一貫した方針です。重要な隣国であり、さまざまな懸案と課題があるからこそ、意思疎通を継続しながら、国益の観点から冷静かつ適切に対応しています。
Dr. Tomohiko Taniguchi joins us now, a former advisor to late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, joining us live from Tokyo in Japan. Thank you so much for talking to us on these issues, Dr. Taniguchi. It's always a pleasure to do so. These heightened tensions in the South and East China Sea, what can we expect from a renewed Takaichi government where she has seen a supermajority in the Japanese parliament? We know she is a China hawk when it comes to her foreign policy. What kind of laws is she expected to pass? What policies now she has that huge majority in the House?
Remarkably, Japan so far has had nothing such as what the United States, the UK, and other nations have had as regards intelligence gathering capacities. Takaichi spelled out the growing need for Japan to be better equipped with intelligence of all kinds, and she's eyeing passing a bill to create Japan's equivalent of NSA, MI6, and the like. So that's one. So without intelligence, you couldn't seriously think and talk about beefing up your deterrence capacities.
And given these comments, Takaichi's also said that she does still want to maintain a mutually beneficial relationship with China. But in practice, is that realistic given those current tensions that are underlying?
Ironically, that is getting more realistic than perhaps 3 months ago, because Takaichi is now endowed with a massive amount of political capital. Xi Jinping is giving her a second look, and President Xi of the PRC values someone with big power. The relationship between the two nations will therefore be stabilized.
And do you think China is testing Japan's red lines with this increased activity, particularly in the East China Sea, or is it simply projecting routine power with that increased presence in the Eastern Sea in particular?
First of all, hardly a day goes by without Japan looking at incoming vessels from Chinese authorities testing to enter Japan's territorial waters. So obviously China has been testing the will and guts and determination of Japan for many, many years. Takaichi has stated something that previous governments have all stated.
And you yourself, you advised Prime Minister Abe during a period when Japan began redefining its security posture. Do you see Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's approach as a continuation of Abe's doctrine when it comes to its relationship with Beijing?
It's safe to say that Takaichi is trying to add on the foundation that Shinzo Abe has laid in order to strike an even better balance between China and Japan. No leader in the East Asia or Indo-Pacific region can neglect the big amount of economic stakes that she has in China, whereas at the same time, it's got to do a lot to safeguard your own national security, your territorial integrity. That's exactly what Shinzo Abe tried to do, and I think that's exactly what Prime Minister Takaichi aims at doing.
Dr. Taniguchi, do stay with us as we turn to a related development coming up next. Pacifist groups from across Japan have gathered in Tokyo to protest the Takaichi government's plan to acquire US-made Tomahawk cruise missiles. The Japanese Ministry of Defense has announced that the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force will expedite the purchase of 400 Tomahawk missiles, which are set to be delivered between 2025 and 2027 as part of efforts to enhance Japan's counter-strike capabilities. Representatives from various civic groups from regions including Yokosuka, Seibo, Maizuru and Karo, all of which are home to Japan maritime bases, have voiced strong opposition to the missile deployment. Civic local leaders have also raised concerns over Japan's accelerating military buildup, warning that the introduction of Tomahawk missiles could signal a broader shift towards military expansion. They also fear that this could pave the way for potential constitutional amendments allowing Japan to engage in offensive warfare. Dr. Taniguchi joins us once again. Japan, of course, since the Second World War has had a pacifist stance, particularly when it's come to offensive military action. However, Takaichi here, a hawk when it comes to her foreign policy. What is the public consensus when it comes to this? We're also seeing an increase in defense spending to 2%, one which used to equivalent to NATO's. Of course, that's increased now. But what's the public appetite for more focus on defense when it comes to Japanese policy?
Well, if the mandate the voters have given to Takaichi is any guide, one should safely say that Takaichi's stance and actions when it comes to beefing up Japan's deterrence capacities have been well understood and accepted. Certainly there are groups that are protesting Takaichi, but they are fully aware their actions would hit headlines across the world. So it's an attention-grabbing exercise, and it's going to affect very little because the number of people involved, I must say, is very small.
And do you think Japan is adapting to a harsher security environment here, or abandoning decades of restraint?
Japan is in a neighborhood that you couldn't envy. You get Russia, China, North Korea in between. This neighborhood is one of the most precarious, and you must be better prepared for the unilateral actions that Takaichi mentioned that China exercises almost daily. And North Korea is building its nuclear arsenal. So it's been long overdue for Japan to have counter-strike capabilities to strengthen its deterrence capacities.
Dr. Taniguchi, thank you so much for joining us. Apologies. Do stay with us as we have another update coming for our viewers. And Japan's Prime Minister has also taken note of the ongoing nature of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, stressing it is important to quickly end Russia's aggression. Takaichi reiterated that Japan will continue to support Ukraine in close coordination with like-minded countries while fully respecting the will of the Ukrainian people. Despite the current difficulties in Japan-Russia relations, Takaichi has said that Japan's policy on resolving territorial issues remains unchanged. Dr. Taniguchi joins us once again. What more do you have to say on this, in how Tokyo aligns itself with the West when it comes to conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine war and negotiating in an area, as you said, with countries that are allied to Moscow, like Beijing?
We should not let authoritarian regimes to blow its horn of victory. That's the stance that Tokyo has had since the beginning of the war, and Tokyo is fully prepared to work as much as possible with European allies and the United States to terminate the war, not to merit Moscow.
Dr. Taniguchi, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It's always a great pleasure to speak to you on these issues.
Thank you. Thank you.
We now move over to South Asia, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has engaged in crucial bilateral talks with global leaders during the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. Notably, he met with Prince Alois of Liechtenstein to discuss strengthening cooperation in trade, technology, and other key sectors. Slovak President Peter Pellegrini also met with the Prime Minister, calling their meeting a historic moment for Slovakia-India relations. The discussions focused on enhancing bilateral ties in various sectors, including, of course, artificial intelligence. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva arrived in New Delhi for high-level talks with Prime Minister Modi today. Both leaders are aiming to boost bilateral trade to $20 billion by 2026, with a focus on AI, pharmaceuticals, and critical minerals. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also met with Modi, underscoring the global importance of AI in solving global challenges, particularly in terms of governance and ethical deployment. On the sidelines of the summit, the Indian Prime Minister also met with the Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake. The presidents and leaders discussed expanding cooperation between the two nations in the sectors previously mentioned and regional security. The AI Impact Summit in New Delhi has continued to attract global leaders, industry experts, and policymakers. Discussions have focused on AI governance, innovation, and the role of emerging technologies in shaping the future of global development. We move on now. US President Donald Trump recently wrote a letter to Bangladesh Prime Minister Tariq Rahman, congratulating him on his decisive victory in Bangladesh's parliamentary elections. Trump emphasized the importance of strengthening US-Bangladesh ties and urged Rahman to take decisive action on defense agreements offering Bangladesh access to advanced American military equipment. According to reports, he also highlighted the need for implementing a reciprocal trade agreement, which he said would benefit both countries' farmers and workers. Trump expressed hope that Rahman would maintain the momentum in trade relations and continue fostering bilateral cooperation. Dr. Sanjay Kumar joins us now. He's a journalist at the Korea Herald. He joins us live from Seoul in South Korea. Thank you very much for joining us here, Dr. Kumar. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. What outcomes and advancement in relationships do we see between Dhaka and Washington after Tariq Rahman's victory just last week?
Thomas, first of all, we should applaud the Bangladeshi people that they have elected a new government. And from Washington perspective, it is really critical right now to engage Bangladesh into its economic interest agenda, as well as the larger Indo-Pacific alignment. And especially it is very critical because Bangladesh also has to, now take part and join for broader engagement in the Indo-Pacific. And that is why it is like killing two birds with one stone from Washington's standpoint. At one point, the Bangladesh government is elected democratically, and that is why it is very easy for Washington to engage Bangladesh into its agenda and the future-driven economic cooperations. And from geopolitical perspective, it would be a very important region because now Bangladesh is going to emerge. If it aligns with Washington, it is going to emerge as a regional player when it comes to Indo-Pacific alignment. So in a broader sense, economics as well as geopolitics, both things are going to be very critical, and Washington may leverage these two aspects.
Indeed. Dr. Kumar, do stay with us as we turn over to our next story. Now, according to Seoul's foreign ministry, South Korea and Canada will hold 2+2 talks between their foreign and defence ministers in Ottawa next week to enhance bilateral relations. The discussions will be followed by the signing of a joint military and defence intelligence sharing agreement and a press conference. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun will meet separately with Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand during the talks. The most recent 2+2 talks between South Korea and Canada were held in Ottawa in November 2024, where top officials from both countries discussed key bilateral issues. Dr. Kumar joins us once again. What more can you tell us about the relationship between Canada and South Korea and the importance of it between both the countries?
Thomas, it is always important to strike the iron when it is hot. When you see the volatile Indo-Pacific and you see the volatilities and the geopolitical uncertainties, both these middle powers, I mean Canada and South Korea, they are trying to make this world more certain and which may align and which may serve their national interest. And that is why the timing is very crucial. From Seoul's viewpoint, we have to understand the needs of Seoul. There is a geo-economic angle here because many South Korean companies, they need Canada's support when it comes to critical minerals and to build a stable supply chains, and at the same time to utilize the energy cooperation potential that Canada and Korea, and especially Korean technologies and Canadian technologies have. So there is a geo-economical angle. And then from diplomatic perspective, for Seoul, they really would like to engage through this middle power initiative because they want to, strengthen the cooperation. They want to boost the confidence between the middle power economies and middle power countries, and Canada is one of them. So from Seoul's diplomatic standpoint, it is really critical. And in long run, in order to engage Canada, on against North Korea, would be also very fruitful. So there is a geo-economic as well as a diplomatic interest which is going to serve to South Korea. And Canada also, likewise, they are also looking for a very stable partner in the East Asia. And after engaging China, I think it would be a balancing act for them to engage Korea also, because Korea and US are in ironclad alliance. So in a way, Canada is trying to engage the linchpin in the East Asian region. So for Canada also in long run, it is going to be important. So it's a win-win geo-economic and diplomatic interest for both the countries.
Dr. Sanjay Kumar, thank you so much for joining us here on the broadcast. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. We now move on, and an Italian judge has ordered the local arm of Spanish food delivery service, Glovo, which is currently under court administration, to regularise up to 40,000 delivery workers. According to reports, the Milan prosecutors earlier this month have placed Glovo's Italian unit, Foodino, under judicial supervision and its chief executive under investigation for alleged exploitation of workers. The Milan judge has confirmed that the decision, initially implemented as an urgent measure by prosecutors, and instructed the court-appointed official temporarily overseeing the firm to ensure its 40,000 delivery workers in Italy were legally employed. Tesla has unveiled a cheaper Cybertruck variant in the United States and slashed the price of its most expensive model, the Cyber Beast, as the electric vehicle maker struggles to find buyers for its pickup trucks. Tesla has priced the new dual-motor all-wheel drive model at $59,990, making it the company's most affordable Cybertruck yet, and lowered the Cyber Beast price to $99,990 from nearly $115,000. With a price cut, Tesla looks to be discontinuing its Lux package for the model that included supervised full self-driving and free access to its supercharge network. But that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates. Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump warns Iran it has 10 to 15 days to strike a deal over its nuclear program or face really bad things. Amid a major US military buildup in the Middle East, Trump says talks are progressing but insists Iran must agree to a meaningful settlement. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is released from police custody after being arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over links to Jeffrey Epstein. Detectives from Thames Valley Police question him for hours as they investigate allegations. President Trump tells the first meeting of his Board of Peace that nations have pledged $7 billion for Gaza's reconstruction, conditional on Hamas disarming. Major questions remain over disarmament, Israeli troop withdrawal, humanitarian aid, and whether the board can deliver results. South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol apologizes for the hardship caused by his 2024 martial law decree 1 day after being sentenced to life in prison. In a statement released through his lawyer, Yoon says he is deeply sorry for the frustration caused by his actions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the country has moved beyond its worst difficulties as he opens a key party congress in Pyongyang. State media quotes him saying the nation now enters a stage of optimism and confidence after years of hardship. Venezuela's ruling party-led legislature approves a limited amnesty bill that rights groups say does not go far enough to free hundreds of political prisoners. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez releases some detainees while easing oil tensions with Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron clashes with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni after a far-right activist is beaten to death in Lyon. Meloni blames left-wing extremists and calls it a wound for Europe, while Macron urges her to stay in her own lane. The United States and Indonesia finalize a trade deal cutting US tariffs on Indonesian goods from 19% from a previous 32%, while Jakarta removes barriers on more than 99% of American imports. Washington also grants select exemptions on Indonesian textiles. The United States pays about $160 million towards more than $4 billion it owes to the United Nations. The partial payment comes as President Trump hosts the first meeting of his Board of Peace, which some experts say could undermine the UN. President Trump tells Congress he is seeking a civil nuclear pact with Saudi Arabia that does not include long-standing US non-proliferation safeguards. Both Trump and former President Joe Biden have backed efforts to help the kingdom build its first civil nuclear power plants. We start this hour with some breaking news coming from the Western Peninsula, and the North American Aerospace Defense Command reported on Thursday that it detected and tracked multiple Russian military aircraft operating in the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone. The aircraft involved 2 Tu-95 bombers, 2 Su-35 fighter jets, and 1 A-50 surveillance plane. In response, NORAD launched 2 F-16S, 2 F-35S, and 1 E-3 radar plane, and also 4 KC-135 refueling aircraft to intercept and escort the Russian planes. NORAD confirmed the Russian aircraft remained in international airspace and never entered US or Canadian sovereign airspace before departing the Air Defense Identification Zone. We'll continue to bring you more on that breaking news and responses as they come to us. But let's dive into the hour properly. We start in West Asia. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated Israel's firm stance on the ongoing negotiations between the United States and Iran. While addressing combat officers at a ceremony in southern Israel, Netanyahu has made it clear that Israel would deliver an unimaginable response should Iranian regime decide to attack Israel. Let's take a listen into that statement.
אנחנו פועלים בצמידות עם בעלת בריתנו הגדולה ארצות הברית. הבהרתי לידידי הנשיא טראמפ את העקרונות שלדעת ישראל צריכים להנחות כל משא ומתן עם איראן. אנחנו ערוכים לכל תרחיש. ודבר אחד בטוח, אם האייתולות יטעו ויתקפו אותנו, הם יחוו תגובה שהם אפילו לא יכולים להעלות בדעתם.
Netanyahu has also emphasized the importance of dismantling Iran's nuclear infrastructure, stating it is a critical step towards reaching a deal. Israel is anticipating that Iran could retaliate with strikes if the US moves forward with military action, with reports indicating that Israel feels the situation is rapidly reaching a critical point. Netanyahu and his team are bracing for the worst. Meanwhile, neighboring countries in the Middle East are also preparing emergency forces, signaling that war preparations are intensifying. Sources also say that US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to meet Netanyahu in Israel on the last day of this month to further discuss the situation with Iran. Joining us to discuss tensions in the Middle East is Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh, a defense and international relations analyst, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Colonel Singh. It's a pleasure to talk to you here on NewsX World. This situation seems to be getting hotter by the hour. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu releasing some provocative statements, knowing that the US president says he claims and favors diplomacy. Negotiations should be at the front between Tehran and the United States. However, a build-up of huge naval forces in the Arabian Gulf, as well as Israel making statements like it has just there. Some would argue that signals otherwise. Iran has already said that Israel would be a target if the United States does decide to launch military action against Iran, wherever that may be inside the country. Do you think Israel is ready for wider possible instability if the United States does indeed decide to intervene militarily in Iran?
Thank you so much, Tom. See, in the 12 days war, which happened in June, Iran destroyed 6% of Israel. So if Israel is giving such provocative rhetorics and trying to escalate, they should be ready because Iran, after this 12 days war, has multiplied its ballistic missiles, has been taking help from Russia and China. They have recently closed the Strait of Hormuz for the naval drill, which they are already doing. So in war, you cannot say which party is going to win because most of us are not aware about the naval nuclear capability of Iran, and the way they have been testing. They have tested more than 100 missiles in last 1 month. So stating that Iran is weak would be very, very imprudent at the moment. Moreover, Ambassador to UN Amir Said Iravani has already submitted a formal letter yesterday to UN saying that they will invoke UN Charter 51, which is about self-defense, and they say that anything which comes to Iran will be treated as a declaration of war, and all the bases, not just of Israel, but UN will be USA will be considered as the legitimate targets. So things are very, very difficult. See, on one side, Iran stands emboldened by its expanding missiles capabilities, proxy networks, and the kind of nuclear enrichment which Iran is doing. On the second hand, we have Israel, which is always ready to, have war with somebody. They have recently launched the vacuum bombs, and they have been somewhere historically demonstrating that they are preemptive in creating wars. So I think things are very, very serious, and Israel must consider that if in 12 days war, Iran can cause that much of damage, penetrating through the Iron Dome and the other defense systems, Iran is very, very capable of wreaking havoc at this moment. So I think this message which Netanyahu has given is not just directed to Tehran, it is also directed towards Washington, it is also directed towards Riyadh and towards the wider Gulf, that be prepared, because even if US is trying for diplomacy, Israel definitely want war. So this is very serious, that at the moment where people are trying to negotiate and have some diplomatic breakthroughs, such provocative statements may lead to something which gets very serious. Yeah.
Okay, Lieutenant Singh, do stay with us as we turn over to our next story. We head over to the United States once again. The Trump administration is advancing a civil nuclear agreement with Saudi Arabia, removing crucial non-proliferation safeguards. The agreement, known as a 1-2-3 agreement, would allow Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium and reprocess nuclear fuel, a potential pathway to nuclear weapons. The previous US administrations insisted on strict controls to prevent nuclear proliferation, but this deal removes those restrictions. However, the agreement eliminates the additional protocol, which could grant the International Atomic Energy Agency the ability to conduct snap inspections and provide broader oversight. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has previously stated that Saudi Arabia would pursue nuclear weapons if regional rival Iran developed them. Despite growing concerns from arms control groups, the Trump administration is moving forward with the deal. The deal is expected to be submitted to Congress by February the 22nd. This comes unless both the Senate and House pass resolutions opposing the agreement within 90 days. The deal will go into effect, allowing Saudi Arabia to build a civil nuclear program. Lieutenant Colonel Singh joins us once again to discuss this this newfound friendship between the Trump administration and the Saudis. What are your thoughts on Donald Trump and his administration consistently undermining his own United States intelligence, other officials, other experts, in a warming Saudi relationship between the Saudis and the United States? And how important of a development is this, and could it be for the Middle East?
Tom, I personally feel that this exposes US hypocrisy, that on one side they do not want one country which is in the Middle East, that is Iran, to have nuclear enrichment, and on the other side they are removing guardrails from Saudi. So somewhere you are basically showing your bias, and you are favoring the people who are gifting you jets. So this actually changes the geometry of Middle East. See, for decades we have seen nuclear capability in the region was tightly restricted. Now US insisted on gold standard agreements, no enrichment, no processing. So if they are going to dilute these guardrails, Riyadh could gain domestic uranium enrichment capability. And once this happens, the Middle East will enter the race for nuclear weapons. And Iran already enriches uranium. If Saudi Arabia gains enrichment rights, Turkey will start, Egypt will start. So proliferation framework will weaken. And this is not just about Israel versus Iran anymore. It is about nuclear hedging. It is about strategic autonomy. It is also about shifting US doctrine that prioritizing countering China over to enforcing strict non-proliferation norms. So Washington may believe that empowering Saudi Arabia will strengthen the anti-Iran axis, but unintended consequences could be that it may lead to volatile regimes in the Middle East, and Iran is now ready to take on these things, and Israel will not tolerate any strategic imbalance. So what we see is a long-term strategic uncertainty, and we see that Riyadh has been paying a price for normalizing its ties with Israel. So somewhere this kind of arrangement will definitely have the Middle East as a boiling pot again, because the strategic priorities are shifting. So we have to see, on one side we cannot favor nations to have it, and on the other side we cannot say certain nation cannot have it. So somewhere we have to be very, very prudent and judicious when we put the guard down on such deals. Tom.
Lieutenant Colonel Singh, thank you so much for taking the time here on NewsX World for us. Always a pleasure to get your insight. We now turn over from West Asia and to Eastern Europe, where Ukrainian drones have attacked the Russian-controlled port of Sevastopol in Crimea, killing one person. Mikhail Razkovazayev, the regional governor, reported that air defense intercepted 16 drones and several buildings were damaged. Talks between Russia, Ukraine and the United States aimed at ending the war in Ukraine have also concluded without a breakthrough. While some progress was made on military issues, both sides remained far apart on key territorial disputes. Ukrainian President Zelensky rejected Russia's demand for full control of the Donbass region, which he says would leave Ukraine vulnerable for further attacks. Joining us to discuss Europe's defining crisis is Colonel Sanjit Sirohi, an international relations and defence expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. Fighting continues as negotiations go in the backdrop, with no progress on the latter front, it seems. Territory once again seeming to be the core issue. What needs to change for there to be movement on either side? Of course, Vladimir Putin and Russia, they want the entire Donbass, an area, by the way, which they don't have full control of yet. They don't occupy it all yet. Of course, Ukraine wants to maintain its full territorial integrity. What needs to change here, Colonel, for there to be some malleability on either side? I believe you might be muted. I can hear you now.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas, for having me on your channel and discussing something very important and which has been going on for last 4 years. Now the question is that both sides have started talking, but the point is that the point of contention which was there earlier, it is still there. Russians are asking for complete control of Donbass, whereas Zelensky does not want to give that territory. So that is the main point which both sides have not agreed to. Now I think Zelensky is fighting a losing battle. On the one hand, he is trying to attack Russia, and now they have attacked Sevastopol, which is a major port of Crimea. And then if Zelensky expects that Russia is not going to attack, then I think he is not understanding the complete this thing of the war. So I think now the next attack will be from Russia. So these attacks will carry on. Until now, the question is, like you asked, that what should be done to make sure that it has to be some territorial gains which Russia has already taken. Their bargaining has to be done on the territory only, and both sides have to agree to it so that there is a win-win situation for the both sides. So in case Russia doesn't agree to that and they carry on with the attack, so I think Zelensky is fighting a losing battle. And day by day, Russians may not be gaining much ground, but the mere fact that Russia is destroying Ukraine every day, there have been attacks, drone attacks, missile attacks, other things. So Zelensky has to accept and he has to concede the points which have been given by the Russians, because I think Americans are also of the view.
Colonel Sanae here, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have some breaking news coming in that's going on right now, where India has officially joined Pax Silica, a US-led global tech alliance, to enhance cooperation in the critical areas of artificial intelligence and semiconductor manufacturing. The move has been announced today during the ongoing India AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. This aims to secure global tech supply chains and reduce dependence on non-aligned nations. The Indian Union Minister, Ashwini Vaishnaw, US Undersecretary of State Jacob Hellberg and Ambassador Sergio Gore were among the key figures who signed the Pax Silica Declaration. Pax Silica was originally launched in December of 2025. It is designed to safeguard the global AI and semiconductor supply chain. In addition to the US, the alliance includes countries such as Australia, Israel, Japan, and the United Kingdom.
Bangalore and broke bread with entrepreneurs who are building the future. What struck me most wasn't just India's scale, although that is breathtaking. It's India's resolve, the determination to chart your own course. I keep talking about the limitless potential between our two nations, and I truly mean it. From the trade deal to Pax Silica to defense cooperation, the potential for our two nations to work together is truly limitless. And I aim to fulfill that over the next 3 years that I'm here. Earlier this month, we concluded the interim trade agreement, a deal that shapes the economic contours of the Indo-Pacific. We overcame friction points that had held us back for far too long. That agreement wasn't just about trade flows or tariff schedules. It was about two great democracies saying we will build together, not just buy from one another. And now today, we take the next step. India joins Pax Silica, the coalition that will define the 21st century economic and technological order. I'm delighted to welcome Jacob here. I'm also delighted to welcome the OSCP Director, Michael Kratios, who's the head of our delegation at this very important summit. The U.S. leads in a strategic coalition which is designed to secure an entire silicon stack. From the mines we extract critical minerals to the fabs where we manufacture chips, to the data centers where we deploy frontier AI. It's a coalition of capabilities that replaces coercive dependencies with a positive-sum alliance of trusted industrial bases. Pax Silica will be a group of nations that believe technology should empower free people and free markets. India's entry into Pax Silica isn't just symbolic, it's strategic, it's essential. India is a nation with deep talent, deep enough to rival challengers. India's engineering depth offers critical capabilities for this vital coalition. In addition to talent, India has made important strides towards critical mineral processing capacity, and that's something that we're fully engaged on also. Policies that will reinforce U.S.-India tech cooperation will power AI innovation and adoption for years to come. We can share trusted AI technology with the world, and especially with partners like India. And critically, India brings strength. Peace doesn't come from hoping adversaries will play fair. We all know they won't. Peace comes through strength. India understands this. India understands strong borders. India understands this part of the world. That strength, that sovereignty, is exactly what Pax Silica amplifies. Because here's the truth, strength multiplies when it's connected. When Minister Vaishnaw and Minister Jaishankar traveled to Washington in recent weeks, they came as partners, forging the future. Their discussions on critical minerals were about interdependency among strong actors, about building supply chains that will not be held hostage. America is building coalitions of the capable and the willing. We're ensuring the technologies that will define the next century. AI, space, and advanced semiconductors are developed, deployed, and controlled by free nations. And we're doing it in a partnership with the world's largest democracy, a nation of 1.4 billion people that share our values and our vision. We welcome India joining to co-found the future. Pax Silica is about whether free societies will control the commanding heights of the global economy. It's about whether innovation happens in Bengaluru and Silicon Valley or in surveillance states that use technology to monitor and control their people. We choose freedom, we choose partnership, we choose strength. And today, with India's entry into Pax Silica, we choose to win. Thank you all.
Thank you, His Excellency Ambassador Jugor, for re-strengthening and highlighting.
Well, there we have it. Of course, a significant announcement coming out of the Artificial Intelligence Impact Summit at the Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. India now officially a member of Pax Silica, a significant agreement, and is not just symbolic, but it is strategic for New Delhi. The alliance is about one thing: the control of the future tech stock, and this comes on the concluding day of the AI India Impact Summit in the Indian capital. Pax Silica itself is a US-led technology coalition launched in December of 2025 to secure semiconductor supply chains, coordinate AI research and standards, and prevent sensitive technologies from reaching adversarial states, and also to reduce reliance on non-aligned or strategic competitor nations. The founding members include the United States, as we just saw there speaking, Australia, Israel, Japan, and the United Kingdom. Now India joins that strategic bloc. By M.K. Agarwal, a senior economist, joining us live from New Delhi itself. Thank you very much for joining us. The importance of this, tell us about it. We are indeed, of course, entering a new world where the likes of semiconductors, critical minerals are geopolitical tools. But what is the significance of India being a part of this deal which has been signed today?
Well, I think India has emerged very strongly. And the first symptom that you can see right now, that AI summit is going on in New Delhi, and where dozens of state leaders are there, and more than 4 dozens, 5 dozens ministers are there, plus other industry leaders are there. And what is PAC Silka? In fact, it is going to strengthen the possibility of supply chain, global supply chain, plus the new global order is there, considering the changing scenario from the 20th century. If 20th century was enriched by industrial revolution, and where the fuel was basically, supply was basically considered about the fossil fuel, particularly the petroleum products, etc. But in 21st century, the growth engines are shifting strongly. And here we can find that it is the artificial intelligence, it is the supply chain, and it is not at least fossil fuel-led growth. So we are having a different world, and new countries have emerged. If Europe are lagging behind, new countries like India is emerging strongly, and it is leading the world in many ways. And that's why US has been doing this type of relationship mentoring with India since the time of Biden, and now it has matured, and now the treaty has been signed. And that's why you will find that India-US relationship is maturing. And what happened to the tariff war that ended, and America realized that India cannot be ignored. And that's why they signed a treaty, and it is definitely a win-win situation both for India as well for US. And this is one step beyond this. Rather, you can say very strong step has been taken up to cementing the ties as well as taking care of the global growth scenario in the future.
Yes, of course, there's one country that will be looking at this very eagerly, Beijing, of course. How do you think that the Chinese will view this expanding alliance?
Well, I believe it is a type of situation where China would have been very strongly pressurizing the world economy just to counter that. Because if you're looking at it, is about the critical minerals, it is about the artificial intelligence, it is about the global security, supply chain, so many things are there. And US is scared of China and its behavior, particularly it is unpredictable, China is unpredictable. And US wants that there is a smooth supply chain functioning, global growth and global economy is functioning smoothly. There is no disturbance, because already if you're looking one critical mineral in terms of silver, and China is playing its own game. Similarly, it may play any type of game. So that's to avoid it. Well in advance, this type of pact has been done. And on board, besides India, there are so many other countries, but India is taken prominently along with other countries. So I believe that it is just to counter any particular country from disturbing the global supply chain.
It is, of course, a direct response from China's dominance in the critical mineral field, and of course its growing influence in AI. Both the United States and China control 70% of artificial intelligence industries. Do you think that this PAC Silka has the potential to rival that of Beijing in the years to come? Do you think it will seriously put Beijing back into regular circumstances when it comes to the current dominance in both rare earths, semiconductors, amongst others?
Well, it's there. Already we are having this type of perception that China may play spoil sport for the other countries, particularly the majorly emerging countries like India. And it may play spoil sport for US economy, because they are having some rivalry in one form or the other in terms of economic issues, in terms of other geopolitical issues. They are not on the same page. So considering that this type of setup has been developed, where China is countered, and now artificial intelligence is emerging rapidly, and India is going to be one of the top 3 countries around the world. So this makes US and India a strong partner in this regard, how to counter China and its dominance and its any bad intentioned approach in future. So I believe that considering such situation and so many other things, geopolitical conditions and having its own advantage, Chinese advantage, this alliance wants that there is a smooth supply chain along with a proper artificial intelligence functioning, and how the global players are enforcing it properly at global level. So these issues are dominating in this pact, and I believe that it is going to counter the Chinese dominance in a major ways.
Indeed. And finally, what have you thought of the entire event? Of course, all eyes have...
Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching The World Report on NewsX. Well, let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi says she wants to accelerate talks on amending the constitution and reforming imperial succession rules. Speaking in parliament, she calls for cross-party cooperation to revise the imperial house law and advance national debate. President Donald Trump warns Iran that it has 10 to 15 days to strike a deal over its nuclear program or face really bad things, as Tehran threatens to retaliate against U.S. bases if attacked amid a major U.S. military buildup in the Middle East. Trump says talks are progressing but insists Iran must agree to a meaningful settlement. And former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is released from police custody after being arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office over claims he sent confidential government documents to Jeffrey Epstein. Detectives from Thames Valley Police question him for hours as they investigate allegations he passed the files while serving as a trade envoy. Hamas says any political path for Gaza must begin with a total halt to Israeli aggression and the lifting of the blockade. Following the first meeting of President Donald Trump's Board of Peace, the group adds that any future arrangement must guarantee Palestinians' rights, including freedom and self-determination. South Korea's former president, Yoon Suk-yeol, apologizes for the hardship caused by his 2024 martial law decree, one day after being sentenced to life in prison. In a statement released through his lawyer, Yoon says he's deeply sorry for the frustration caused by his actions. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the country has moved beyond its worst difficulties as he opens a key party congress in Pyongyang. State media quotes him saying the nation now enters a stage of optimism and confidence after years of hardship. Venezuela's ruling party-led legislature approves a limited amnesty bill that rights groups say does not go far enough to free hundreds of political prisoners. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez releases some detainees while easing oil tensions with Washington. French President Emmanuel Macron clashes with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni after a far-right activist is beaten to death in Lyon. Meloni blames left-wing extremists and calls it a wound for Europe, while Macron urges her to stay in her own lane. For this hour, we start with the breaking news coming in. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is reportedly holding talks with his Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi, discussing Iran's nuclear program. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump is increasing pressure on Iran to come on to terms with its conditions, which involve halting Iran's nuclear and other ballistic missiles program. The U.S. is also intensifying its military buildup in the region, and many sources have claimed that Trump could be deliberating an attack on Iran's facilities and government sites. Earlier in the week, Lavrov also warned of serious consequences for the international community in the event that US strikes Iran. Now we have another breaking news coming in from Russia and Japan. The Kremlin has said that relations with Japan has been reduced to zero over Tokyo's current hostile stance towards Russia, further adding that there has been no ongoing peace dialogue between the two countries. This comes as Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi remarked in her inaugural address in the parliament that Tokyo was keen on resolving its territorial issue with Russia and reaching a peace treaty. Russia and Japan have never signed a former World War II peace treaty, as the main obstacle remains an unresolved territorial dispute over Kuril Islands, which Japan claims as its northern territories. Now for this hour, we start with India. U.S. Ambassador to India Sergey Gore has commented on India's oil sourcing, stressing the U.S. position against the purchase of Russian oil. Mr. Gore said the U.S. does not want any country to buy oil from Russia, reiterating President Trump's call for energy decoupling to help bring an end to the Ukraine crisis. While the Ministry of External Affairs has highlighted India's strategy to diversify energy sourcing to ensure energy security for its population of 1.4 billion. Ambassador Gore also expressed confidence in India's role in the US-led Pax Silica initiative aimed at strengthening global supply chains. Ambassador Gore hinted at the imminent signing of the US-India interim trade deal, with both countries close to finalizing the agreement, while he also stated that the Quad remains a top priority for Washington, sending a strong message to the world. He also noted that the first meeting held by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio after taking office was with the Quad, underlining its importance. Ambassador Gore added that while exact dates are not finalized, Secretary Rubio is expected to travel to India in the next few months as part of a Quad-related engagements. On energy, he has confirmed active discussions over India's oil imports are underway, with details still pending public announcement. While External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has also clarified that a Quad leaders summit was never formally scheduled, but working groups continue to operate, signaling sustained cooperation among the four nations. Now for this, we welcome Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar. He's a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Doctor, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, it seemed before Ambassador Gore came to India and US's relationship was very turmoil. How do you analyze the current relationship ever since Mr. Gore has arrived to India?
Thank you, Usama. I think there has been a perceptible change in the US attitude because Sergey Gore is a very, very close confidant of President Trump, and he has the eyes and ears of President Trump. So I think that is making a difference. And not only he is looking after India, he is also responsible for the South Asian region. And therefore, I feel that the kind of statements which he is making from time to time are very, very positive. Secondly, he is making an attempt to meet the people in power in Delhi. He has frequent meetings in the Ministry of External Affairs, and recently visited the Western Command and things like this. So there has been a perceptible change I can see in the softening of the attitude. He's trying to create a conducive atmosphere for setting back those strained ties, if I would say that. So that's why his present statement also is by and large on those lines, and he's trying to indicate that it is not India specific as far as the Russian oil is concerned. It is across the board, because they don't want any country to engage with Russia as far as building up the revenue or improving the economy of the Russians to carry on this war and prolong this war. A second important aspect, yeah, please.
Yes. Major General, you can carry on, sorry. Yeah.
A second important aspect is about the Quad. There is a diplomacy involved here, and there is a signaling involved here that previously it was being thought that the next Quad summit, President Trump, which is going to be held in India, President Trump is not going to attend, but now I think a perceptible change is taking place, and he is now carrying out a realignment of that strategy, and Marco Rubio's visit has been announced. So I think that's a positive sign. Likely objective here when Marco Rubio comes to India is going to be